First off, welcome everyone. My name is Neil. Hey, how dare you, Alan? This is about me. My name is Neil. I'm the product manager for ProcessMaker 4. Thank you for attending today. We're going to be going over the newest release, upcoming 4.2. For that, I'm going to turn it over to Alan Bollinger, who is our Director of Product and Engineering, and he's going to give you a little bit of an overview and a demo. During this process, we are going to be pausing after each feature demo to take questions. If you would like to take them, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll be moderating that as we go, and we'll also have some time for questions at the end. So, Alan, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. So hi, everybody. I'm Alan. I'm the Director of Product for ProcessMaker. Here's my email address. If you have any questions, you can email me directly. Yeah, without any ado, let's get started. So real quick, this URL here that we see on the screen, we want to hear from everybody. So if you have questions or concerns or use cases you'd love to share, or you'd like to talk with our product team directly, we very much want to talk to you. So please, I'll post this link at the end and we'll send it out later, but come tell us a little bit about you and let's get a conversation going and a dialogue between ProcessMaker and your company. And let's see how we can work together and how we can make our product better. So yeah. All right, without any further ado, let's jump into ProcessMaker. All right, so ProcessMaker 4.2. So ProcessMaker 4.2 has been in development for about 4 months now. And this process has been really cool. We've added a bunch of really neat different features and enhancements to the product. And we're going to go over some of those key ones right now. So 50 different enhancements. We've gone through lots of the application, tweaked a bunch of little things, and overall just made it a better thing. So much more that those of us who are on the product team, when we go back to 4.1, we're always looking for things that were improved, right? So first thing that we fixed is, well, not fixed, first enhancement that we've created is accessibility. So we had a DACA and WCAG review of our application, and we have added enhancements specifically for accessibility. For those of you in higher education or in government, this is a huge thing for you. That means your forms can be compliant. And I'm going to go over some of that stuff right now. So the first thing you'll notice, and hopefully everybody can see ProcessMaker on my screen, is the colors are a little bit darker and a little bit different. So we've gone through, we've reviewed all the color palettes and all the things within each of the pages, and we've made them more compliant. So this means your dashboards, your tasks, all those things are going to be up to spec for that. From there in your screens that you create, there's going to be even more accessibility. So for example, here's the screen builder. If I go into a input, for example, you can see that there are some new advanced functionality in here specifically around both your ARIA labels for screen readers, as well as accessibility around people who use keyboard only. So you can control tab orders through your screen and all those kind of things that you would expect. So take advantage of those. Those are there to help you, giving you all the tools that you need to build compliant screens. All right, so that's accessibility. All right, our second enhancement is the process manager. So the use case behind this one is that we needed a user that could help us when processes were misconfigured or needed a single person of responsibility for a process. So we've added this new user role called the process manager. And this new feature belongs in the process screen itself. So if I go to my process here and I go to the configuration, there will be a new drop down here for process manager. And the process manager user has access to a couple of special features here. So the most important one is they're going to be the primary responsible if there's a problem. So if a task is not configured properly, or it happens upon a user that is inactive for some reason, whether that is out of their scheduled time or out of the office, or just there's no one to take over a task, your process manager is going to get that notification. We've added a few more notifications for the process manager. Again, person is sole responsible when the request started, when it was canceled, when it was completed. They've got that role there as well. And then the final place that the process manager comes into play is in the processes themselves. So from here, we have some new notifications where we can specifically notify the process manager at any step in your process. So So that is the new process manager role within ProcessMaker 4.2.
And I have not seen any questions popping up in the chat just yet, but again, a reminder, if you do have any, feel free to put them there and we can address them as we go, or we'll have time at the end.
Sure, and I'm happy to show off any of this stuff if you would like me to go into more detail as well. Okay, next, user assignments. So the user assignments functionality in ProcessMaker 4.2 have been updated with a bunch of new functionality. So it's this your sidebar here. So the first one you'll notice is that there is a new assign by rules expression. This is a big one where you can use field expressions to sequentially, or I'm sorry, in an orderly, sequentially, by expression, assign users or groups to a task. So if you have a specific piece of data and you want it to go to someone very specific, like an administrator under a certain use case, you can evaluate your request data and change your assignment rules, and then you can have those cascade. So that's a big improvement in there. The next improvement you'll notice is there is now an assignee for, again, the process manager. So single source of responsibility there. And then we have some new things here around managers and assignments to managers. Now, I'll go over this a little bit more in detail later on when we get to the organizational changes. But these two things specifically are super important because sometimes you want a request to go from one person to the other, and you would really like that person's manager to take it over, but you don't necessarily know who that manager is until the person takes it, right? And that's where this automatic escalation stuff comes into play. So for example, if I have a user, and again, this is a group, which is not a good case. So if I have like this user, I can say, whenever I get to this task, this user specifically, it's going to automatically skip this person and go to their manager. That's a new one. The other one that's use case that's now supported is the ability for the user themselves to loop in their manager on a task. So they would then have a button in their sidebar of their task. That new button would have an escalate to manager kind of thing. So all those features on functionality are new as part of user assignment rules update in ProcessMaker 4.2. Neil, we good? Moving on?
Yes, good to go. Still no questions so far.
Okay. All right, next feature, organizational rules. So to dig deeper into this. So one of the things that we heard from everybody was that they wanted an easy way to use a process in the context of their organization. But your organization is not 24/7. Some of you are, but mostly we have office hours and we have people that go out of office and things along those lines. So in 4.2, we've added use cases around specifically that functionality. So the first thing we'll talk about is in status, we've added a couple new features here. So the first one is a user can be set to out of office. Somebody goes on vacation, out of office. What this does is when a user is assigned, let's say in this case, this user is assigned, right? And they go out of office. Anytime a task reaches that user in your process, their task will automatically be reassigned to their delegation that's assigned below here. So in this case, that would be me. Again, we heard this is a very common use case. Someone's covering for somebody else, right? That's how you would do it. The second scenario that we've added is a schedule. So this is super important if you have call centers or you have office hours, or you don't want to take tasks after hours, those kind of things, or you have multiple shifts, you can use this functionality to schedule when you're available to take tasks as they're assigned. And again, same kind of rules apply as the out of office. If a task comes in outside of these hours, they will automatically be delegated to the following user. So those are two new scenarios that we support. The other thing you'll notice down here below delegation is there's now a manager dropdown. That manager dropdown, again, if you remember back to the assignment rules, that assign to manager, escalate to manager, this is where that setting comes from. So there's two places that the manager lives. One is here on the user. If this is configured, and again, you can turn this off so there isn't one configured here. But if there is one configured here, this will be this user's manager always, right? That takes precedence over any other setting. If this user is a member of a group, so in this case, I could be an administrators group, that group has its own manager. So what you can do then is you can say this user belongs to this group. The user manager, if there's an assignment where it escalates to a manager, would go to this person. Again, unless I had a personal one assigned. Now, if the person belongs to multiple groups, and this does happen where you come up with a situation where there's a bad bit of logic in the process where you could have multiple conflicting assignments, just note that that kind of a scenario would create a situation where that task would be assigned to the process manager. And then the process manager could determine who gets that task. So again, it's not something to be aware of. If you do that, we don't want to have the system pick for you. We want to make sure that you have that control over who should it go to. So those are the changes for organizational rules inside the product. So I see.
And we do have a question. So will it be possible to escalate to manager once SLA has expired?
So we are looking at that specifically right now, actually, because we want to do more with the expiration due dates. So we're going to explore that a little bit more. So that's a good question. We will have more information on that next year. Okay, cool. All right, moving on. Process manager, user science, organizational rules. All right, next, it's spazzing out. All right, so the next thing we've added is we've added the BPMN specification for loops within your process. So loop services 3 specific scenarios that are common in your processes. So the first scenario is I would like to repeat a task a certain number of times until some kind of evaluation returns true. So what that looks like is in my process map here, I have a new sidebar called loop activity. And in here, I can turn on the loop mode. So right, I set it to a number. And then when it'll run that as many times until the field expression evaluates it true, and it evaluates at every step as it goes through each check. The second one scenario is I have an array of data already as part of my process, part of my request, and I would like to do something in parallel with all of those things. So let's say I have an array of users. I would like to send out 50 emails or one email for every user that's in that user array. I can use a multi-instance in parallel and it will send those all out. So what you have is a couple settings here. The first one is what is the input array? So in this case, it would be users like this. And then we have the option to do an optional output data variable. And what this does is, if this is optional, if you do have this set, what it'll do is it'll store any responses from all of those tasks into a new data array. If you leave this blank, it will update the previous one. So you have control over if you want to change your data, if you don't want to change your data as part of that loop methodology. Okay. All right, and then the final loop one is sequential. So this one is the use case behind this one is I want to do an activity, a task for each one of the people in this array, but I want to do it one at a time, and I want to check a expression at every time there's a completion. So this lets you go through and then stop. And the way that I would use this is like if I'm looking for approvals or something along those lines, I could do like send it out, and then if one of those is a certain criteria, I could exit, and that'll automatically close all the other activities that are in that loop. So this is a combination of those two. Now, this does support exit events. So obviously we've got the field expression and the default configuration, but you can also set boundary events on these. So if you wanted to do a conditional evaluation, you could do a conditional bound event. If that hits, it can interrupt your process, stop the loop. You could do a timer, same kind of thing, right? A timer comes in, you have a signal, anything that's supported that interrupts will stop loops, cancel all those things. So, and loops applies to form tasks, multi-instance, I'm sorry, they're called multi-instance, form tasks, sub-processes, and service tasks. So send an email, for example, print a PDF, those kind of things. So that is the new functionality coming with loops.
And we have a couple of questions not related to loops, but first, can you have more than one process manager?
No, there's one person responsible for the process management.
Yes, you can assign different ones per process, but not multiple. And the other is related to the DocuSign feature. The current template or the current connector allows us to send out a template that was manually created in DocuSign. Is there a way to automatically parse the forms input from ProcessMaker and create a template in DocuSign? Is there a connector that allows that?
No, we didn't want to create a situation where you were managing your DocuSign documents in ProcessMaker. But the DocuSign connector, what it does once your template is configured in DocuSign, you can send any of your request data to populate your DocuSign document for signature. So again, we didn't want to duplicate functionality, and DocuSign is going to do a much better job of setting up templates than we are, because that's what they do. That's their job. So we want to have a clear separation between those two.
All right, let's move on.
Okay. All right. User signals. All right, so user signals, the user story behind this is I would like to add some more rich content to my processes or to my applications, not just to my processes, based around the users in my system. Whether this is adding additional logging for user activities or just triggering some workflows based on an interaction with a user. And so what this looks like is, if I go over to the admin section, actually, let's go to this process over here. I have the ability to turn on and turn off user signaling. And there's 4 specific scenarios that are supported in the system. So the first one is created. And the use case behind this one is when a user is created, maybe I would like to onboard them or do some kind of a setup process, right? This is especially true if you're doing a synchronization with like an LDAP or an Active Directory service. You would like to import, and then when they get created, go ahead and do some extra steps to configure ProcessMaker or to do a process, right? So that's one. Second one is delete. User gets deleted. I would like a signal to be surfaced with that user's information and then do something with it. This is very important if you have compliance or you'd like to log or store that information outside of the user collection. You have now the ability to capture that event to use it. Read is the next one. Read obviously is when it's accessed directly via the API or via the user's edit in the admin over here. And what this does is it, again, creates us an event that you can capture, especially for compliance when you want to know who's accessing user information. So that's super important. And then the final one is update, right? Something changed. I want to do something else, right? This will trigger that event. You can then capture it, log it, whatever you want to do to satisfy your requirements. So I wanted to go into one other thing while I was in the users area. So the second thing we've added for users, and we've added a couple different things, is this extended properties. So one of the things that we have heard from our customers is that they want to store additional information as part of the user object. And this can be a token from another system. Maybe you're integrating with us through your system, but we wanted to create a way that could make it easy for you to store that information to join it with us. So in the settings area, there's a users tab. And from here, I can define specific variables that are going to be added to the user object. And this is super important, like I said, for connecting. So you see right here, I've got a couple different user IDs and things along those lines. Now, this information will then be available for you to use and access and write to anywhere in the system that you access a user. So again, if you're doing a synchronization and you want to sync from your Active Directory to ProcessMaker, you're going to want to store your Active Directory user IDs, right? You're going to want to store some additional information from your user collection, right? Like I know some of you do students, some of you do account information or different things like that. This would be a good place to store that. Now, this information is only available to the administrator of your system. So the user themselves cannot touch this data. So if they go and edit their profile in ProcessMaker, they can't touch it. But like I said, for you to needing to store it, this is going to be your way to do it. Okay. All right, so there's a question in the chat. How do you react to events thrown by user signals? Right, so when you turn on signals in general, such as the user signals, what you would do in your process, you would go into your design, and I'm just going to click on a random one here. And what you would do is you can have a couple different scenarios. So one, your start event can be set to a signal start event. And what this means is that anytime an event that is set, like anytime a signal is thrown, and if you want to think of signals like flares, shoot it up in the air, big light, everybody notices that's watching for a flare. Subscribe model. Anytime this signal is thrown, anything that's listening to it, and it could be any number of processes, intermediate events, as well as start events. And then what you do is you just go in, you subscribe to whatever it is, so in this case, like this collection. And then now anytime this signal gets surfaced, this process will start, right? Now you can do other things as well. Like I said, an intermediate event is another one, right? Sometimes you want to say, I have all these processes running. I want to cancel 5 or 6 of them. I could do a signal subscribe intermediate events that have a cancel in them. And that's a way that I can talk between my processes. So signaling is super, super powerful in that respect.
And we have one more. Can we use the extended property to store user birthdays? Say you want to use that data in a script to send them an email on their birthday.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely, that would be a great use case. You could store all kinds of information there. Yeah, what I would do in that scenario specifically, right? I would store it in that extended property field, and then I would have a little process that wakes up with a timer start event, every day at 8 a.m. goes, looks to the user's API, says anybody that's got a birthday that is this day, let's go ahead and kick off this process. Like, let's send them an email, let's send them a gift card, right? And then dies. So that's a really good use case. Yeah.
All right, we have one more question in the chat that we may want to defer to some of our future stuff, but if you want to address it, you can. How do you create a custom signal?
So custom signals are very easy. So if you go to your sidebar, there is a signals manager right here. And again, this is something baked into the old system as well as the newest one. So in here, you just go ahead and click add a signal, give it a name, give it a variable name, and then you're ready to go. Once you do that, your signal will be available to subscribe to wherever you want. And then subsequently, you can also access that signal from external to ProcessMaker. If you wanted to say, throw an event from your own website or your own integration or your own server software, you could say, call this webhook right here, this URL. And what that'll do is when you access this, just as a call, is it'll immediately go fire the signal in ProcessMaker, and then anything subscribe will wake up and do its activity. So this is a fundamental piece. You can create these really simply anywhere you need them. So I like signals. They're one of my favorite features. Really gets the asynchronous into the system. Okay. All right, moving on. Unified auth. Okay, so one of the things that we heard from our customers was that they wanted more control over server settings and authentication schemes within ProcessMaker. So what we've done is we've gone in and we have added a whole bunch of stuff here. So the first thing we've added is we have LDAP support baked into the product. So it's no longer a separate piece. So what you can do is, and again, if those of you who are familiar with LDAP will see all the settings that you expect here, all the configurations, everything that you could ever want to do in LDAP. And then what you can do here, which is really neat, is once you set it all up and when you want it to synchronize and what groups and things along those lines, you can also use that variable mapping that we were just talking about. So if you want to bring in more data, you can do that here, right? So we support LDAP, we support SCIM, and then we have single sign-on available as well. I'm going to go in this one a little bit because this one will let you, out of the box, will let you connect to these services. I mean, we support more, so we can add more if you see one that you need that's not here. But what this does is once you enable these functionalities and these features, and again, we see we've got all the mappings and all that good stuff, and then you can then specifically go in and configure your individual service. So here's SAML, for example. You see we've got public certificates and authentication context and PEMs and all the good stuff that everybody would expect when they do this kind of thing. So once you do this and you do enable this functionality, when you go to the login screen, you'll see the login box, and then you'll see optionally. So you can turn off local login and you can turn on just SSO, and then you would see like login with SAML or login with Google. But you can also have both if you wanted to produce both scenarios where you want to have local login and SSO login. So there's some options and flexibility there. Second thing we've added on that respect that I wanted to touch on really quick is email settings. So we've added the ability for our users to manage email settings themselves. So up until this point, it was a cloud ops function. So what we did is we've made it accessible for you to do it yourselves. And we support multiple email servers. So if you want to send with different people or you want to do with different stuff, you can. So the way that this works, which is really cool, is when you go to send your email or configure your process to send an email. So I'm just going to go over here and show you. So if I go like send email here, you'll see I have a email server here that I can select from. So I have that functionality now, which I couldn't before. So I can, marketing emails go out on this marketing service versus my corporate email. You can distinguish between those two and control that, which is kind of fun as well. Okay, so that's email server stuff, single sign-on, all that good stuff.
All right, we have a few questions that have come up. So first, does this mean you can use multiple auth methods, or do you have to use one at a time? Oh, did we lose Alan?
Sorry, I'm here.
I
got the bell. I got the bell.
There we go.
So yeah, you can use multiple auth methods for sure. Yes. Yes, you can have multiple single sign-ons enabled. You can have user synchronization separately. Like we have customers that use LDAP to add load users into our system, and they use SAML to log them in. So that is a supported scenario.
All right. We have another one about DocuSign. So they're asking about where the documentation is on how to parse ProcessMaker form inputs into a DocuSign template. That
is a good question. So if you are in your ProcessMaker, the documentation is over here in the user menu over here on the sidebar. And then from here, if you go over and search for DocuSign, there is actually detailed instructions on how to use DocuSign.
So I think that will be released along with the 4.2 documentation once we launch, though, correct?
Correct. And like I said, it's actually already been updated. If you want to go through here, it is all the packages and everything have already been updated. We've already been working on the documentation. So.
Okay. Yeah, so you want to just make sure that you access the ProcessMaker 4 documentation and look at the 4.2 pre-release.
Correct.
All right. And last one for now. Is it possible for us to focus on modeler performance? This is a good opportunity for us to plug that we would love to get feedback like this. And we're going to be sending out that link again after to gather feedback on what you are hoping for us to be focusing on in the future, what features you would like, what challenges you have. So it is absolutely possible for us to focus on some of these. What we really want to do is prioritize what is going to be the most impactful for our users. So please do submit that feedback after we finish this webinar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'd love to know what process you're having, if you're having performance problems with, and what you're doing with it, and then what your specs are, obviously.
Feel free to reach out directly as well.
Sure. You have my email address. We'll send out information after this webinar to everybody. Get an email. Okay.
All right. Let's press on.
All right. Scripts API. So this is kind of a secondary feature, but it's still important. So the use case behind this feature is I have some old code that I have written, and it does a specific functionality, and I don't want to build a process around it. I just want to be able to access it. And an example of that would be like I have an API that does geolocation on IP addresses. I don't need it in my process. I mean, I could use it in my process, but I really just want to use it as a service, like a microservice. Now, we already have the scripts engine. We already have a bunch of the pieces to do this. So what we did is we made it so that it was easy for people to access their scripts externally to the system. So what that looks like is if I go to my scripts area, and again, whatever script I want to do, if you click on the gear to configure it, there is a new option at the bottom that says enable direct API access. When you turn this on, it gives you a unique URL for this script, and then you have some security settings in here. And what you can do is you can send data into this, and you can run it again synchronously or asynchronously, it's your choice. But if it'll run the script, it'll do whatever you want it to do. So we look at this as a really easy way to develop microservices, to interact with your stuff, and to start using ProcessMaker. So again, external one-off things, great. And then the side effect of this is this script will be available then for you to use as part of your process, right? Or vice versa. I got it in my process, it's cool, it's standalone. I want to use it in that context, I can here as well. So pretty straightforward. Again, same functionality as the signals API stuff. So if you wanted to do that, we're really thinking about how easy to get it to integrate with your software externally to ProcessMaker as easy as possible. So that is the scripts API.
We have another question. Can we search in the data of one process for the next process?
You search in the data of one process for the next process. Can you give me more details on what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, if you could add a little more context in either the ask or the chat around that question. But I think if that would be helpful, please do that. If I'm interpreting your question correctly, I believe you can do that. The way to do that is either to send a signal from the process that you start with that you want to use the data from and include the data from that process to send that signal to the next process, or you can use a data connector to store what data you're hoping to use later in a collection and then use that data connector in the next process to pull that data in. So if that's not the answer to your question, please type in a little more detail and let us know. But that's how you would do it if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah, I've heard some questions too about sequentialness as part of the requests thing here. And the one thing that you'll notice in ProcessMaker as you get more into it is that the numbers that are listed here are not always sequential. Like you see, I've got 1788 and 1789 and then 92. And the reason why is this list menu here is actually the jobs menu. So if you think of each one of your requests as a job that's happening, they're all happening all at once. So sub-processes, system processes, and ProcessMaker is also built with ProcessMaker. So there are system jobs that are running as well. So that number on the sidebar here doesn't relate to that. So that being said, the one use case that we get all the time is like, I have a contract and I want the contracts to be sequential, or I have invoices and I want them to be sequential, right? In that case, you really want to look at storing that data in a collection. That way you have unique data, you can have multiple processes interacting with it, and that number and that information can be sequential and specific to that use case. So like I would have an invoices collection, for example, or I would have an expense report collection. And as that data gets created, and then my requests start to look more like the actions on the data and less about the data itself.
And we did get a little bit of clarification. I want to search previous data that the user started in the past. After that, I want to query in previous data and use as a variable for new processes that the user wants to start.
Wow. All right. You know what? Make sure you put that comment on the form. I want to reach out to you and talk a little bit more about that, because you could definitely do that by querying the API and getting the previous ones with the same process ID and the same user assignments, and then start querying some data and do more things on that. You could also use a conditional start event to evaluate data from other processes to start new processes. So there's a couple different ways you could handle that and load that data in. So
yeah, we'd love to know more about your use case. I'll echo Alan here. Please fill out that form and we will get in touch with you following this. One new question, when will we be able to use magic variables in PMQL?
Magic variables are supported in PMQL in certain contexts. And again, you would only use it when querying the API. So in PMQL, right, currently in the current context is about like the search here. You can use magic variables right now with PMQL related to charts. So if you wanted to filter your chart data for a user, or filter some of the request data in a screen that has some of that kind of thing in it, you could do that right now. So what you want to do is obviously use the magic variables. So check the documentation on how to do that. We have updated that. So there are some examples.
All right, and that's all the questions for now.
All right, next, moving on. All right, so that's ProcessMaker 4.2 overview. So obviously I'm happy to ask into more questions. So we're targeting January 2022 with this. So that's next month already. It's hard to believe. All right, so what's coming next is the next thing everybody asks me about our roadmap and what this looks like. So let's talk a little bit about that. All right, so our immediate next objective is lifecycle. One of the main feedback we get from our users is that they want to have more control over moving between environments. So maybe you have a test environment where you want to really run through your applications you've built, and then when you're ready, you want to deploy that to a server. So what we've been doing is we've been really deeply looking into what does that mean for different users and what are the scenarios that we want to support. So right now we've come up with, right now we're in the planning stages of doing this. So this will be coming out as our immediate next version after ProcessMaker 4.2 in January. This will deal with publishing. So that means taking development applications and putting them into production. Maintenance, making it easy for you to maintain your application and then update production, much more simple. That's the thing, more easy. So we're going to really be working on making sure that that's a thing for you. And then we're going to add a couple other very specific scenarios. So for example, you're going to have a lot more control over how versions work. So if you have a screen and you save it, those of you who have been building with ProcessMaker, if you save a screen, that a pop-up comes up and says, hey, what did you change? That information is going to become super relevant in lifecycle management because you're going to be able to control versions of screens, versions of all kinds of stuff in your processes. You'll be able to roll back to older versions, test before you go live, whole bunch of things like that. Next thing we're talking about with this update is testing, right? You have your data, you have a process, maybe you have one installation, no dev system. We want to make it easy for you guys to test your applications without polluting your production data. So we're going to have the ability for you to tag processes as production, as well as run processes that are not tagged as production and have the ability to clean up the data after your testing is completed. So we're really thinking about this from a developer standpoint because we really want to make your guys' life easier and simplify those kind of things. Next functionality we're talking about, so drafts. We're going to have a couple tasks specific updates in this update. So drafts is one. Currently, you can do drafts. You could save for later, route, and come back to the task. But save for later or draft tasks, so we're calling them, allows you to essentially save a task for later. It will not advance your process. It'll save the data as it's been inputted for that user to come back later. Doesn't worry about validation. That's the main part of that. The second one we're talking about is the ability to roll back or restart tasks. We've heard a lot of feedback around the ability that a lot of you guys would like to say, okay, I would like to take where I am right now in my process and I would like to go backwards. We're going to add that functionality. We think that's super powerful and super useful. There's a lot of use cases around that. So we want to give you guys that power and functionality. And then, yeah, so those are the main features that we're looking at for lifecycle management. So again, if anybody has any ideas or thoughts on this that you would love to share with us, like I said, follow that link that we're sharing, let us know. And if you'd like to talk more about it, we'd love to talk with you. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're talking about is metrics. So what we're looking at with metrics is actually three things specifically. So number one, metrics for your business. What does this mean? This means how many people are running my processes, what users are doing, and how much time, general reporting for your overall use of ProcessMaker. Second scenario is process level metrics, right? And we're talking about different routes, how long it takes, percentage of time it goes through a certain flow, giving you more information and setting more value for your processes so that you can make better decisions on how to tune your processes and to find bottlenecks, right? Bob in accounting takes too long to do this thing. We want to start to be able to identify that Bob is a bottleneck. We're going to let you do that. Something we're going to look at. And then the final one we're going to look at is we're going to look at for you to add analytics of your own inside of your applications. So if you have, for example, Google Analytics, and you'd like to install that in your process, we're going to let you do that. We're going to give you an easy way to integrate those kind of settings into your individual processes, again, so that you can control it for yourselves and make your own reporting on that. All right, so that's metrics. And then my thank you slide. So we do have some questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple already. So could ProcessMaker support versioning features such as Camunda?
Yeah, we're looking at that for sure. Yeah.
There you go. Next, speaking of about PMQL, can we add an order by clause to our queries for saved searches, more like to sort the results in a particular form?
That's great. I'm going to write that one down. We're going to look at getting that done. That's a great
Yeah,
idea.
and again, other features that you want, challenges that you have, I'm going to put that link to that form in the chat right now. It's just bit.ly/ProcessMaker4. We would love to hear it. We are actively looking to gather feedback, collectively understand how important these features are to our customer base and to enable you to do more. It's going to inform a lot about our roadmap into 2022 and beyond.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions, folks? We are happy to take them. We'll hang out for a little bit just to make sure if you're still typing. But if there's anything else, again, I'm going to just keep on banging. Please click that link. Please let us know what you'd like. We'll follow up with y'all about use cases. We'll send you a recording of this demo so you can go back through. And any other questions you have, feel free to reach out.
Yep, and as soon as we have the ability to get people involved and keep people using 4.2, we will do that. So if anybody is interested in early access, send us a message. We would love to do more information or talk with you about that.
All right, we've got a question. How does ProcessMaker compare to Decisions?
So Decisions is more workflow top level, I think, whereas ProcessMaker gets a little bit more into the complexity. So you can start off really easy with us, and then you can really get into those organic growth use cases. As those of you who have been using BPM for a while know, your workflows start to evolve, especially as you start to use it. There's a lot of exceptions and human pieces of that. And I think the one key distinguishing factor for that when we look at Decisions specifically is that really complex use case can be handled a little bit in a little bit more consistent way with us and a little bit more complex scenarios. If that's a good enough answer, but I like I said, I would love to talk with you more about that. So if you would like to have that conversation, I would love to.
And that's all the questions that we've received. So if there's nothing else, I think we will, oh, no, great. We got one more in. The use case we have for using magic variables in PMQL is when creating saved searches. For instance, I create a saved search that shows only what concerns the currently logged in user.
Right. So again, it depends on the context you have. So in your dashboards, using a saved search, your dashboard knows about the user. Your dashboard has the _user magic variable, and that's there for you to plug in. So really, when you do dashboards, you really want to have contextually aware and user specific content. And that's how you would do it, right? You'd use that magic variable in your PMQL to filter and sort that. If you're using it for a saved search itself, that saved search already knows that what user it has, so that you can definitely use them in that context. And like I said, the documentation has examples if you would like more.
And if you'd like to talk more about your use case, if you'd like a little bit of direct time with us, feel free to reach out. We'd be very happy to talk. Can PMQL perform max?
Max, like a function, like a SQL function, max? No, there are functions not baked into it. It does some date time functions, but it does not do, like I said, sorting is something we'll look into.
Okay, and can you talk a little bit more about what ProcessMaker intends to achieve with the DocuSign integration?
Okay, so the DocuSign integration use case is I have a contract. Let's say I'm a real estate agent, or I'm doing a student onboarding, or I have a specific bank loan document that I need signed. I can configure that in DocuSign, setting up the different parameters like the name, address, those kind of things. And what happens is you then configure ProcessMaker. You'll send over the ProcessMaker data, populate all those fields in your template, send it to the user for signature in DocuSign, and then ProcessMaker can be set to wait for a response. Okay, that's optional. You don't have to, you have your process to do it, but if it is set for a response, what will happen is once the user signs the document via their DocuSign interface and hits complete, that data will come back to ProcessMaker. We get all the data from DocuSign that they provide, times, dates, IP addresses, the document signed. That data is then available as part of your process. So yeah, it's to add some, and again, the use case, right? I have one contract and I have placeholders and I want to funnel through it for a request when it comes in. So that's the integration use case.
And as part of the configuration, when you put a DocuSign connector into your process map, you can use magic variables with some of the types that are in there. You can, so if you would like to say, well, I don't know who this contract is going to go to, you can leave your template open in DocuSign and use magic variables to take email address name from a form that you have in your process to send it directly to whichever user or signer you need to, as how you want to build your process through. Next, can dashboard report use collector information?
Collector information, like collections too. Hi, how are you doing from Arizona? I recognize you. So collections data has saved searches. So absolutely, you can use that data to filter and sort with your PMQ on your dashboards. So we can definitely help get you set up with that. I see the next question.
Yep. Could ProcessMaker support RPA?
Absolutely. So ProcessMaker, for those of you who don't know, has a full API driving it. So everything that you see in your interface is actually run through the API. So if you have a separate system like an RPA and you like to kick off processes or talk back and forth through the system, there is a full API here. You can interact with tasks and processes and users, anything that you want. An RPA is a great example use case of this, right? I have specific kind of automated things I'm doing, and I want to trigger different events in ProcessMaker. It's here, right? Subsequently, if you want to be simpler, you can also use the signaling part as well. So there is that, that is much more simple. You can be more specific, and then you can kind of trigger generic events as well. So you have a couple options for how you want to interact.
All right. Is there a way for a user to currently know who a case is assigned to? Not talking about request participants this time.
Yeah, of course. So anytime you want to talk about who is being assigned, and I'm clicking around here like creates person. So the individual tasks here, obviously, you know who is assigned to it here. So you can see I'm the admin user assigned. You can also see down here in the history who did the individual thing. So you do have access to both of those pieces of data.
All right. How would you compare ProcessMaker with Flowrite?
I'm not familiar with Flowrite, but I will check it out. And like I said, send me a link in the survey. I'll do an evaluation and we'll let you know.
Yeah, they're leaving on Saturday.
All right. Any further questions, folks? We're happy to take further now. We're also happy to talk. Again, you have Alan's email address, and we would love, again, to plug for you to fill out the form that we put in the chat. Again, it's bit.ly/ProcessMaker4. And from there, we can, if you'd like to contact, if you'd like us to reach back out, there's a little drop down that says, hey, we'd love for you to, I'd love for you guys to contact us, and we'll reach out. We're happy to discuss use cases. If you'd like to schedule a demo, we're here for you. All right, here we go. One more. Can we fill out the form and as form a live demo of DocuSign?
We can definitely get you a demo. I'm not sure if if we're connected with DocuSign right now. Like I said, this is I don't want to mess around with this right now live.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we have a template set up for you, but please do reach out, let us know. We will happily sit down and do a demo with you one-on-one and show you how that works.
For sure, for sure. And again, if you'd like anything like that, like go fill out the form, let us know what you want. We'll make tutorials, demos, whatever we can do to help you guys get started with ProcessMaker. We're here to help. Okay.
All right. And if there's nothing else, we look forward to getting your feedback and to hopefully hearing from you and talking to you directly in the future. Thank you very much for attending, and hope everyone has a good day.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.